The air does not just feel cold here, it feels heavy, like it is trying to crush your lungs. You are standing on a rusted concrete platform at the edge of the world, watching a column of steel nearly a mile long hiss steam into the frozen twilight. Behind you, the lights of European Russia are a fading memory, a flicker of comfort that you are leaving for a journey into the great unknown. In front of you lies 13 million square kilometers of silence. It is a name that has become a synonym for exile, for suffering, and for the absolute end of the road. But what if everything you thought you knew about this place was wrong? What if Siberia is not just a wasteland, but a massive breathing paradox? This is a land where the ground stays frozen for 10,000 years. Yet, the summer sun can bake the earth until the grass turns to gold. It is a place where people live in houses built on stilts because the earth is literally made of ice, and where a single mistake in the wilderness does not just mean getting lost, it means becoming a permanent part of the landscape. Welcome to the Gateway. You are about to enter a world that does not follow the laws of physics you grew up with. Here, water turns to steam in the blink of an eye, and the silence is so loud it makes your ears ring. If you stay long enough, the landscape starts watching you back, and it does not always like what it sees. The iron vein into the void. The journey does not begin with a step, but with a vibration. To understand the colossus that is Siberia, one must first submit to the rhythm of the iron vein, the Trans-Siberian Railway. It is the longest steel artery in the world, a scar of industry stretching nearly 6,000 miles from the onion domes of Moscow to the gray waves of the Pacific Ocean. But to view it merely as a logistical triumph is a mistake. It is a psychological experiment conducted on a continental scale. The traveler is encased in a vibrating metal tube for 7 relentless days. The train cleaves through 8 distinct time zones, shattering the body's circadian rhythm until the concept of morning and night dissolves into a gray, perpetual twilight. The sun rises and sets over the same endless canopy of birch and pine, day after day, until the specific Tuesday or Thursday is lost to the void. This is the pulse of the continent, a rhythmic thrumming that mimics a heartbeat. Inside the carriages, the atmosphere is thick, heavy with the scent of bituminous coal smoke, the sharp tang of strong black tea brewing in the samovar, and the intimate, humid warmth of strangers sharing a confined space. Here, amidst the clinking of glass tea holders and the murmur of Cyrillic, the traveler is squeezed into a cabin with souls who have inhabited this void their entire lives. They do not perceive the danger that lurks outside the double-paned glass. To them, the void is not an abyss, it is a living room. As the iron wheels rattle through the Ural Mountains, the stone belt that cinches the waste of Russia, the journey officially leaves the logic of Europe behind. The signs change script, the faces shift in structure. The train descends into the taiga. This is the largest forest on Earth. A green ocean of pine, fir, and Siberian larch that swallows the majority of the northern hemisphere. It is a biological entity so vast that if one were to disembark at a nameless halt and walk into the tree line, They could wander for decades without ever encountering another human shadow. It is the realm of the Amur tiger in the south, stalking through the oak leaves, and the reindeer in the north, scraping at the lichen. It is a place where the canopy is so dense it strangles the light, creating a permanent mossy gloom on the forest floor. The taiga is not merely wood and needles, it is a living museum, a vault of silence. Hidden within these endless thickets are the Evenks, the indigenous hunters who have survived here since the Stone Age, long before the first Tsar was crowned. They speak to the forest in a language of whispers and smoke. They believe that every twisted larch has a spirit, and every rushing river possesses a memory. For the Evenk, Siberia is not a territory to be conquered or mapped. It is a relative to be respected and feared. But for the Russian Empire, and later the Soviet Union, this forest was a warehouse. It was a place to hide resources, gold, diamonds, timber, and a place to hide people. The trees have witnessed the march of millions who were sent into the green dark and never returned. After days of nothing but the hypnotic flicker of trees, the horizon finally fractures, revealing the silhouette of Irkutsk. They call it the Paris of Siberia, but that moniker carries a melancholy weight that the true Paris could never comprehend. To walk through the streets of Irkutsk is to walk through a cemetery of imperial elegance. The city is renowned for its wooden lace, thousands of 19th century houses carved with intricate, delicate patterns that resemble the work of a jeweler rather than a carpenter. But why does such high culture exist in the middle of a frozen wilderness? The answer lies in the Great Tragedy of 1825. A group of Russian aristocrats and military officers, the Decembrists, attempted to overthrow the Tsar in St. Petersburg. They failed. In any other nation, they would have faced the firing squad, but the Tsar devised a more Siberian punishment. He stripped them of their titles, their wealth, and their humanity, and marched them into the east. Their wives, the highborn daughters of the courts, abandoned their palaces and jewels to follow their husbands into the snow. They did not merely survive the exile, they transformed it. They built mansions in the mud. They founded schools, theaters, and libraries, bringing grand pianos and crates of French wine to a land where men were still fighting wolves with sharpened spears. Irkutsk became a monument to the defiance of the human spirit, a place where those condemned to perish in the cold decided to build a masterpiece instead. Yet, as the eye inspects these wooden houses today, a disturbing detail emerges. Many of them are sinking. The ornate window frames sit at knee level with the sidewalk. The heavy oak doors are slanted and jammed. This is the breath of the permafrost. The ground here is not solid earth. It is a mixture of dirt and ancient ice. As the planet warms, the ice beneath the city melts, and the earth turns into a slow-motion swamp, a slush that swallows the history of the Decembrists inch by inch. Irkutsk is a city that is literally being eaten by the ground it stands on, a slow digestion of history by the land itself. The journey leaves the sinking lace of Irkutsk behind, pushing 60 miles south to the edge of the sacred sea. The air changes instantly. It becomes crisper, sharper, smelling of ozone, deep water, and crushed stone. And then the vision reveals it. Lake Baikal. To call it a lake is an insult. The locals call it the sea, and the geology agrees. Baikal is a miracle of faults and rifts. It is the oldest lake in the world, formed 25 million years ago in a scar where the Earth's crust is slowly pulling apart, widening by 2 centimeters every year. It is the deepest wound on the planet's surface. If one were to take all the Great Lakes of North America, Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario, and pour them into Baikal, they would still fail to fill the basin. It holds 20% of the world's liquid fresh water. 1 out of every 5 glasses of water on Earth sits right here in this single abyssal trough. But Baikal is not just a reservoir, it is a metropolis of crystal. In the winter, the water freezes into a sheet of ice so clear that it defies the brain's ability to process depth. One can stand on a layer of ice 5 feet thick and look down 130 feet into the obsidian darkness below. It feels like walking on air, a suspension over the void. Suspended in this glass are the methane pearls, bubbles of ancient gas rising from the deep sediment, trapped in the freeze like strings of alien jewelry. Cracks run through the surface like frozen lightning bolts stretching for miles, sketching a map of stress and release. The ice is not silent, it possesses a voice. Because the lake is so massive, the ice is in a constant state of tectonic shift. It groans, it screams with the pitch of a dying animal, it booms with the resonance of a cannon shot, a sound that vibrates in the chest of the traveler. The locals warn that if the lake falls silent, that is when fear should take hold. The speech of the ice means it is breathing, adjusting. If it stops, the pressure is building for a massive, catastrophic shatter. A hovercraft carries the journey across the surface to Listvianka, a village that masquerades as the Disneyland of Siberia. Here, tourists consume omul, a whitefish found nowhere else in the universe, smoked over local pine. It is a place of transition, where the modern world attempts to monetize the ancient abyss. But as the craft moves further from the shore, the facade vanishes. The realization dawns that the traveler is floating on top of a mile-deep trench that could swallow the tallest skyscrapers of New York without leaving a ripple on the surface. The path leads deeper into the lake, to the island of Olkhon, the spiritual heart of the north. If Baikal is the body of Siberia, Olkhon is its soul. This island is a landscape of violent contradictions. On one side, towering cliffs of red marble plunge into the water. On the other, sand dunes ripple like a fragment of the Sahara transplanted into the ice. This is one of the most sacred coordinates in Asia, the Vatican of Buryat shamanism. The traveler approaches Cape Burhan, known as Shaman's Rock. It is a jagged twin peak of dolomitic limestone rising out of the blue water. The Buryat people believe that the Lord of the Lake resides inside a cave within this rock. For centuries, the hoof of a horse was forbidden to tread here, and women were barred from approaching, lest their presence disturb the slumbering energies. Even in the modern era, the 13 pillars of Serge stand guard. Wooden poles wrapped in colorful ribbons of blue, yellow, and white. Each ribbon represents a prayer, a pact sealed between a human desire and the unseen world. The wind on Olkhon is a distinct entity. The locals have named the winds as if they were gods: the Sarma, the Barguzin, the Kultuk. The Sarma is the monster. It can drop from the Primorsky mountain range without warning, accelerating through the valley to reach speeds of 100 miles per hour, flipping boats and turning the calm ice into a chaotic wall of white water and shards. Standing by the Serge pillars, with the ribbons snapping like whips in the gale, a magnetic heaviness presses down. Compasses spin aimlessly, cameras glitch and fail. The locals do not attribute this to magnetic anomalies, they call it power. They believe Olkhon is a portal, a place where the veil between the waking world and the spirit world is worn thin. The traveler stands at the center of a spiritual map that existed long before the concept of Russia was born. As the sun sets over Olkhon, painting the ice in bruised shades of violet and gold, the invisible trap of this land becomes apparent. The land lures the eye with a beauty that feels extraterrestrial. It makes the traveler feel like an explorer on the verge of a great discovery. But the beauty is a mask for a brutal efficiency. The cold is not merely a temperature, it is a predator. It waits for the gloves to be removed for 5 minutes. It waits for trust to be placed in ice that is too thin. It waits for the arrogance of the belief that humanity is the master of this landscape. We have witnessed the sacred sea and the Paris of exile, but the surface has only been scratched. The compass points north, where the story darkens. Ahead lies the kingdom of permafrost. The journey moves toward a city where the ice fog can blind the eye, to a hole in the earth so large it generates its own weather system, and to the ruins of a black forest where the trees died standing up. The ice is watching. The Empire of the Frozen Sun. Welcome to the terminal velocity of the thermometer, the latitude where the map shivers and curls, and the logic of the sun seems to contain a glitch. You are standing in Yakutsk, the city that is an error in the warm mathematics of the living world. Here, at the absolute zero of human stubbornness, in the depths of a January that feels less like a month and more like a geological epoch of ice, the mercury surrenders. It drops past the comprehensible freeze, down to minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit, a point where the physics of the planet begin to break. At this temperature, the air is not something you breathe, it is something you negotiate with. It becomes a solid thing, a wall of needles entering the lungs, causing the world to undergo a chemical treason. The first thing that hits you is the ice fog. Do not mistake this for the romance of London cobblestones. Or the soft embrace of San Francisco mornings. This is a thick gray shroud made of frozen exhaust fumes, the phantom residue of diesel and unleaded mixed with the collective exhalation of 300,000 souls. It is the breath of a city struggling to respire, dense enough to swallow the noon sun and turn the sky into a bruise of twilight that never heals. You stand at a major intersection where the traffic lights are blurred stars, unable to see the headlights of a truck until the grille is 5 feet from your chest. A monster emerging from the white void, roaring with a throat full of frozen oil. The fog is a predator, a ghostly presence that tracks you, clinging to the heat of your face, finding the moisture on your eyelashes and turning them to glass. Gluing your eyes shut with the weight of your own blinking, you fumble for your technology, your lifeline to the warm world, pulling out a smartphone that is a miracle of silicon and lithium. But here, it is a dead stone. It dies in 60 seconds. The liquid crystals in the screen seize up, paralyzed, and the battery, designed for the pocket of a Californian, simply surrenders as the electrons refuse to flow. It is a total cardiac arrest of the digital age. God help you if you wear the wrong armor. If you have made the critical error of wearing metal frames on your nose, the cold will weld them to your skin instantly. It creates a bond of frost that burns like fire, and trying to pull them off will take the flesh with it, resulting in a trip to the hospital in a city where pain is the baseline. Everything here is a lethal calculation. Every step is a wager against the thermodynamics of death. Trudging through the squeaking snow, which sounds not like soft powder but like crushing styrofoam, due to the acoustic signature of temperature so low the friction changes, you head toward the local fish market. The site is a surrealist painting brought to life. There are no refrigerators humming here. Why would there be? The atmosphere is a freezer more powerful than any appliance. The city itself is the appliance. Huge stalks of stroganana, the frozen river whitefish, stand upright in wooden crates like planks of lumber at a hardware store. They are stiff, petrified, their eyes open and clouded with rime. They are not food anymore. They are artifacts of the cold. The vendors stand outside for 8 hours a day, monoliths wrapped in layers of reindeer fur and compressed wool so thick they lose the shape of the human form. Becoming towers of textile and hide. Watch them closely, they do not shiver. Shivering is the body's panic, and panic wastes energy. They have learned to exist in a state of moving hibernation, a metabolic trance where the blood slows but does not stop, their eyes scanning the grey mist as guardians of the protein, statues of the frost. But the most haunting part of Yakutsk is not the air, but the anchor. Look down at the feet of the city, and you will see the terror of the foundation. You will not see a single building that dares to touch the earth. Every apartment block, every school, and every government bureau is perched on massive concrete stilts, 12 feet in the air. The city is hovering because beneath the concrete, the soil is a lie. It is permafrost, the sleeping giant of the Carboniferous age. If these heated buildings touched the ground, the warmth from their radiators would bleed into the soil, causing the permafrost to weep and turn into muddy soup. The buildings would buckle and perish, sinking into the abyss of their own heat. Yakutsk is a city on crutches, a hovering metropolis terrified of the very ground it stands on. Performing a delicate balancing act between the warmth of the living and the eternal frozen temper of the dead earth. In this silence, there is a constant sound, a low-frequency drone vibrating in the teeth. In this city, the engines never sleep. It sounds like a giant hive of mechanical bees, the collective idol of the Siberian life support. From October to April, the ignition is a forbidden switch. No one turns off their car. If you eliminate the engine for more than 30 minutes, entropy takes over. The oil turns to black jelly thick as tar, the tires freeze into flat-bottomed squares that will not roll, and the metal becomes as brittle as glass, shattering on impact. The exhaust pipes puff white clouds day and night, feeding the fog. If your car dies on a remote road outside the city limits, on the Kolyma Highway or the Lena River crossing, you do not call a tow truck, you call for a rescue. You prepare to burn the upholstery for heat, because in this environment, a mechanical failure is not an inconvenience. It is a tragedy in waiting, a sentence written in ice. You meet a local driver, a man named Ivan with hands like leather, who explains the code of the North. If you see a car stopped on the side of the road in Siberia, you must stop. It is not a polite suggestion. It is the law of survival. To pass a stranded traveler without checking on them is seen as a betrayal of the species, a murder by omission. In a land where nature is trying to extinguish the spark, humans are the only warmth left to one another. But even the machines are frightened here. Ivan shows you his van, a vehicle that has been Siberianized. It is a cyborg of felt and steel, with double-glazed windows trapping air to stop the frost, and the entire undercarriage wrapped in heavy blankets and tarp, a diaper for the transmission, a coat for the differential. This is not a vehicle, it is a mobile survival capsule, a pressurized vessel navigating the vacuum. Driving here is like navigating a spaceship across the surface of Pluto. One wrong turn, one patch of black ice hidden under the drift, and you become a permanent monument to the cold. Leaving the suffocating embrace of the Yakutsk fog, the plane lifts off the runway built on ice and flies west toward the wound in the world, Mirny. As the clouds part and the white carpet dissolves, your stomach drops into your shoes. You see the scar. The mere diamond mine is a hole in the earth so colossal it defies the brain's ability to render scale, creating vertigo just by existing on the map. It is over 1,600 feet deep and more than half a mile wide, a spiral staircase drilled into the heart of the planet. From the air, it looks like a drain to the center of the world. Or the eye of a stone god staring up at space. This was the Soviet Union's greatest treasure chest, the epicenter of crystallographic greed. During the Cold War, they pulled billions of dollars of diamonds out of this frozen pit, sifting shiny carbon from the dirt. But the mine has a darker physics, a gravity of its own. Because of its sheer size and depth, it has created its own weather system, a microclimate of the void. The temperature difference between the warm bowels of the pit and the freezing surface air creates powerful invisible downdrafts. It is a vacuum cleaner for the sky and a strictly enforced no-fly zone for helicopters. Not because of secrets, but because of physics. Several aircraft have been literally sucked out of the sky, grabbed by the invisible hand of the vortex, and smashed against the terraced walls. It is a man-made abyss that refuses to let anything escape its gravity. Standing on the edge of the rim, looking down into the spiraling road that takes trucks 2 hours to descend, it feels like looking at a dead volcano. There is no magma here, only the cold memory of pressure. The mine represents the brutal extraction of Siberia. The earth did not want to give up these diamonds. The ground fought back. To get them, engineers declared war on the geology, using jet engines mounted on trucks to melt the permafrost and dynamite to shatter rock harder than concrete. The mere mine is a scar that will never heal, a permanent testament to what we will do for shiny things. Leaving a crater that looks like the footprint of a giant who stumbled. If Yakutsk is the city of ice fog and Mirny is the city of the abyss, our next stop is the city of shadows, the kingdom of heavy metals. You travel further north, crossing the invisible line above the Arctic Circle to Norilsk. There are no roads to Norilsk. The asphalt simply gives up hundreds of miles away. You cannot drive here from Moscow or Yakutsk. You are cut off from the continent, arriving only by plane fighting crosswinds or during the short mosquito-choked summer thaw by a slow boat through the grey chop of the Arctic Ocean. It is the most isolated city on Earth, an island of concrete in a sea of tundra. Norilsk is a city built on a foundation of nickel and copper, a periodic table of wealth and poison. It produces a huge percentage of the world's palladium, the metal in your catalytic converter and smartphone, but the cost is a bill paid in breath. As you descend, you see the skeletons of the forest. For miles around the city, the taiga is dead. The trees are grey, leafless, standing like burnt matches, asphyxiated by decades of sulfur dioxide. They are a petrified forest of the industrial age. The smelting plants belch a constant plume of heavy smoke. A dragon that never sleeps. The air in Norilsk does not taste like air. It tastes like metal, like sucking on a penny, like sulfur and matches. The pollution is so intense and chemically complex that the snow sometimes forgets to be white, turning black with soot or vividly red. A bloody snow for a bleeding city. It is a monochrome world. A high-contrast photograph where the buildings are painted in bright yellows, violent pinks, and deep blues. This is not for aesthetics. It is a psychological defense mechanism, a desperate attempt to fight the grayness that eats the mind. Without these colors, the brain begins to fracture under the weight of the polar night. Here, for 45 days straight, the sun does not rise. It is the long darkness, the noon that looks like midnight. where the circadian rhythm dissolves and residents walk in a twilight state, battling the polar hysteria. Norilsk hides an even deeper secret in its concrete bones. This city was not just built, it was extracted from human suffering. It began as Norilsk, the crown jewel of the Gulag system. Tens of thousands of prisoners were sent here to mine the rock in conditions that defy description, working in -58 degrees with hand tools, pickaxes swinging against frozen earth. Lung tissue freezing, fingers snapping. The city is literally built on bones. Under every foundation, under the copper plant, under the theater, lie the nameless architects of this icy hell. Today, the residents are proud, possessing a fierce pride of survival. They see themselves as Arctic warriors, a separate breed. Referring to the rest of Russia as the mainland, as if they are living on a different planet. They earn higher wages than anyone else, but they pay for it with their biology. Life expectancy drops here. Respiratory disease is the neighbor everyone knows. It is a closed city where foreigners need special permission to enter. A throwback to the secret cities of the nuclear age. It is a place of hostile prosperity where the ruble is strong, but the air is weak. Walking through the streets, shielding your face from the acidic wind, you realize that Norilsk is a test tube, a grand, cruel experiment to see if human beings can live in a technological bubble in a place never meant for life. And yet there is a beauty in the brutality, a terrifying, sublime beauty. When the ice fog lifts in Yakutsk, the sky is a crystal dome. When the sun hits the frozen vapor, you hear the whispering of the stars, a soft rustling sound of breath turning to ice crystals instantly and falling to the ground like diamond dust. In the silence of the Mirny mine, you feel the age of the earth, the billions of years of pressure that made the gems. In the darkness of Norilsk, the aurora borealis dances, green and purple ribbons ignoring the smokestacks. A cosmic light show over the industrial graveyard. People live here. They fall in love here. They raise children who learn to wrap their faces before they learn to walk. They drink vodka to burn out the cold, eat raw frozen fish to keep the blood thick, and keep the engines running, always running. Because to stop is to die. This is the edge of the world, where the map ends and the ice begins, where civilization is a thin layer of insulation over a planet that is indifferent to our presence. Yakutsk, Mirny, Norilsk, the trinity of the freeze. The monuments to human stubbornness. We stand on the stilts, hovering over the melting permafrost, watching the black snow fall, waiting for the sun to remember us, and listening to the hum of the engine, the only heartbeat that matters in the white silence. The cold does not forgive, and it does not forget. It only waits, and we wait with it, alive in the freezer, burning the dinosaur bones to stay warm in the city that should not exist but does because we refuse to leave. The stone sentinels and the soul of the tiger. You leave the sulfur-choked skies of Norilsk behind, and with them the illusion that humanity has tamed this world. The taste of nickel and burning coal, that acrid metallic tang of industrial conquest, fades from your tongue. Only to be replaced by a cold so absolute it feels less like temperature and more like a physical weight pressing against the chest. You are fleeing the industrial scars, the open wounds of the earth where man has clawed for copper and palladium. tearing the tundra apart to feed the furnaces of the south. You are returning to the wild, to the stone sentinels that watch in silence, embarking on a pilgrimage across the largest, coldest landmass on Earth. You travel east and south, drawn by the magnetic pull of the great arteries of Siberia, until the taiga opens up and you stand upon the banks of the Lena River. To call it a river is a failure of language. It is a moving continent, one of the longest and most powerful hydrological forces on the planet. Draining a watershed the size of India into the Arctic Ocean. But here, in the depths of the Yakutian winter, physics of liquid motion have been suspended. The Lena has become a frozen highway, a shimmering, opaque ribbon of blue-white concrete, forged by the crushing grip of 50 degrees below zero. This is the Zimnik, the seasonal lifeline, the only road that exists in a land that rejects asphalt. The ice here is not the fragile, cracking skin of a temperate pond. It is a tectonic plate of its own making, often exceeding 2 meters in thickness. It is a lens of suspended violence. You watch as trucks weighing 20 tons, laden with fuel, timber, and mining equipment, drive onto the river surface as if it were a paved interstate. They move in convoys, dark shapes against the blinding white, their headlights cutting through the heavy ice fog, the tumen that settles low over the valley. This fog is not water vapor, it is crystallized breath. A suspension of ice needles that hang in the air, refracting the light into ghostly halos. The drivers keep their doors unlocked, a grim superstition born of necessity. It is the first rule of the river. If the ice cracks, if the river decides to swallow the machine, the pressure of the water will seal the doors shut instantly. You have seconds to bail out before the cab becomes a tomb. As you join this procession, the ice sings under the tires. It is not a crack, but a deep, resonant booming sound, a mournful frequency like a drum struck in the deep ocean, echoing up through the chassis and vibrating in the marrow of your bones. It is the sound of the river breathing under its cage, the groan of millions of tons of pressure adjusting to the weight of your passage. You are driving on the skin of a dormant leviathan, but as you travel down this frozen spine, away from the settlements and into the deep wilderness, the horizon begins to shift. The flat, monochromatic white of the riverbed is suddenly broken. The sentinels appear, rising from the mist like the ramparts of a forgotten citadel. Rising nearly 650 feet straight out of the frozen water, the Lena pillars loom like a petrified forest of giants. They are a cathedral not built by hands, a fortress of Cambrian limestone that glows with hues of ochre, rust, and bruised purple in the low winter sun. These are not merely rocks, they are the exposed ribs of the planet. They are 500 million years old. They were formed when the Earth was a completely different place, when Siberia was a separate continent drifting near the equator, submerged in a warm, shallow sea, teeming with the first complex life. They have stood here while supercontinents collided and tore apart. While empires rose and vanished, while humanity clawed its way out of the mud and learned to speak. When you stand at the base of these pillars, dwarfed by their verticality, you feel a primitive insignificance that is both terrifying and liberating. You are a flicker of a candle standing before a mountain of time. These stone curtains are chronicles written in calcium and pressure. The limestone is a graveyard of the Cambrian explosion. If you look closely at the scree slopes and the sheer walls, shielding your eyes from the glare of the snow, you can see the fossils of ancient creatures, trilobites, archaeocyathids, primitive sponges that lived and died before the concept of a dinosaur even existed. They are trapped in the stone. Perfect and still, waiting for eyes that would not exist for 500 million years to witness them. In the short, explosive burst of the Siberian summer, you can climb the wooden stairs to the top, your breath catching not just from the exertion, but from the sheer scale of the drop. From the summit, the view is alien. You see the vastness of the Sakha Republic stretching to the curvature of the earth, an endless undulating ocean of green taiga and blue water with no roads, no power lines, no geometry of human interference. This is the true Siberia. It is a place that does not need us. It breathes without our permission. It was here long before the first fire was struck. And it will be here long after our cities have succumbed to the rot and the permafrost. The leaner pillars are the guardians of the silence. They remind you that while we can dig holes in the ground and build cities on stilts, we are just guests in a house that does not belong to us, squatters in the halls of the geological gods. As we conclude this aquatic part of the journey, the song of the land changes key. Shifting from the major chords of the river to a dissonant minor progression. We have to talk about the great thaw. The journey forces you to look down, past the ice, into the soil itself. The ground beneath your feet, the permafrost that has acted as the concrete foundation of this entire region for millennia, is betraying us. The planetary freezer is breaking. In recent years, great craters have started appearing in the Siberian tundra. Opening up like sores on the skin of the earth. The most famous, the Batagaika crater, is known by the locals as the gateway to the underworld. These abysses are not caused by meteors from the heavens, they are caused by the rot from within. They are the result of thermokarst collapse and methane explosions. As the ancient ice thaws, organic matter that has been frozen since the Pleistocene, grasses, roots, animal carcasses, the detritus of a lost world, begins to decompose. The microbial feast begins. The rot releases gas, pressure builds in the subterranean pockets, and eventually the ground literally explodes, vomiting mud and ice into the sky and leaving behind a ragged, weeping scar that grows larger with every rainfall. These are not static features, they are growing wounds. You can hear them. If you stand at the edge of the Batagaika, you can hear the trickling of meltwater and the shifting of mud. The sound of the earth eating itself. Scientists climbing into these craters are finding a world suspended in animation. They are pulling frozen giants from the mud, woolly mammoths so perfectly preserved that the meat is still red, the shaggy hair still clings to the skin, and partially digested buttercups can still be found in their stomachs. It is a resurrection of the dead. A time capsule forced open by the warming atmosphere, but it is not just the megafauna that is waking up. The thaw is releasing things far smaller and far more dangerous. The necrobiome is stirring. Ancient viruses and bacteria, distinct biological entities that have not seen the light of day in 30, 40, or 50,000 years, are being reanimated. We speak of Pithavirus sibericum and Mollivirus sibericum, giant viruses that slumbered while humanity invented agriculture, writing, and war, now waking up hungry in the slush. Anthrax spores from reindeer that died 70 years ago are seeping into the water table, turning the very sustenance of the land into poison. The melting permafrost is a slow-motion catastrophe, a silent alarm ringing across the steppe. It is shifting the foundations of Yakutsk, the coldest city on Earth, where apartment blocks built on concrete piles are beginning to lean and crack as the solid earth turns to swamp. The architecture of the Soviet era, built on the assumption of eternal frost, is failing. It is buckling the pipelines of Norilsk. Twisting the steel veins that feed the global economy. It is a stark, violent reminder that the trap of Siberia is changing. The land is no longer just holding its secrets, it is releasing them. We have seen the coldest cities and the deepest scars. We have seen how humans have tried to conquer the ice with iron and fire, fighting a war against the temperature. But Siberia is more than just industry and cold. It has a soul that is deeper than any diamond mine, a memory longer than any pipeline. The earth here is not dead matter. It is a dormant beast, and it is beginning to stir. We have traveled across the iron arteries, the trans-Siberian tracks, and the ice roads. We have felt the bone-shattering chill that turns breath to crystals, but now we move toward the final frontier of the spirit. We have seen what happens when humans try to break Siberia with machines. But as we move toward the southern borders, toward the frontiers of Mongolia and China, the machines fall silent. This is where the GPS signals falter. This is where the maps start to fail, where the contour lines blur into white space. You are leaving the Siberia of the gulags and the mines. And you are entering the soul of the taiga. Up until now, your journey has been about survival, keeping your skin from freezing to metal, keeping your engine from dying, keeping your eyes open in the hypnotic gray of the ice fog. But in this final leg, the challenge changes. It is no longer about whether you can survive the environment, it is about whether you can understand it. You are heading toward the Altai Mountains, the Buddhist temples of Buryatia, and a plateau so remote it makes the moon look accessible. Siberia is not just a place where people were sent to vanish from the world. It is a place where, if you look closely enough, you might actually find what was lost. But be warned, the deeper you go into the spirit of this land, the harder it is to leave. The landscape is not just watching you anymore, it is inviting you to stay forever, to become part of the silence, to let the moss grow over your boots and the wind erode your name. Your journey south takes you to the Altai. The lunar mirage of the south. If you were expecting more flat white tundra, the horizon is about to shock you. Suddenly the earth buckles and heaves, thrusting upward in violent, majestic defiance. Massive, jagged peaks of granite and slate tear through the clouds, their summits capped in eternal glaciers that feed the turquoise rivers below. This is the Altai, often called the Golden Mountains, and for good reason. When the sun hits these peaks at dawn, they do not just glow. They look like they are made of molten ore, burning with a divine fire against the deep indigo sky. You find yourself on the Chui Highway, the Choisky Tract. National Geographic calls this one of the 10 most beautiful roads on Earth, but beautiful is a word that feels too small, too domestic for this. This road is a scar with a history. It was built on the bones of prisoners, a historic trade route that linked the forests of Siberia to the Silk Road of Asia. Every kilometer of asphalt covers a story of endurance and suffering, a testament to the thousands of gulag inmates who carved this path through the granite with pickaxes and inadequate clothing. As you drive, the lush, dark green of the Siberian cedar forest the taiga that has surrounded you for thousands of miles begins to peel away. The ecology shifts rapidly. The trees become shorter, scrubbier, twisted by the wind until they vanish entirely. The air becomes dry, thin, and electrified with static. Within an hour, the forest is gone, replaced by the tri-steppe. Suddenly, you are not in Russia anymore. You are not even on Earth. The landscape transforms into a yellow, orange, and deep red expanse that looks exactly like a lunar scenery or a vision of Mars. The Kızılçin Valley opens up, revealing layers of clay and sandstone painted in bands of crimson, rust, and white, eroded by aeons of wind into bizarre alien shapes. The earth is cracked and ancient, parched by the rain shadow of the great peaks. This is a sacred geography. The Altai people, the indigenous nomads of these highlands, believe that these mountains are the center of the universe, the axis mundi. They do not see rocks and dirt. They see the Altai Easy, the master spirits of the peaks. Every stream, every pass, every twisted larch tree has a consciousness. You stop your car near a field of ancient petroglyphs at Kalbak Tash. You walk out onto the wind-scoured rock and run your hand over a stone that was carved 5,000 years ago by a nomadic hunter using a stone tool. You see images of deer with antlers that spiral like tree branches, of snow leopards, of hunters with bows, and of strange celestial symbols that look like spaceships or sun gods. These are not just doodles. They are contracts with the land. They are prayers etched in granite. The people who lived here understood a secret that we have forgotten in our cities of glass and steel. You do not own the Altai. The Altai owns you. There is a magnetic anomaly here that makes your head throb, a vibrating silence that presses against your eardrums. It is a place of power that has drawn shamans for millennia to converse with the sky. Along the roadside and at the tops of high passes, you see ovus, chaotic pyramids of stones piled high by travelers, wrapped in blue silk ribbons, kardak, that flutter frantically in the wind. These are altars. You are supposed to add a stone and walk around it 3 times clockwise to ask for permission to pass. If you do not, the locals say the mountain will close, and in Siberia, when a mountain closes, it is not a metaphor. Avalanches fall, engines fail, clouds descend to blind the driver, turning the world into a milky nothingness. People simply cease to be found, swallowed by the vastness. The history here is not just etched in stone. It is buried in the permafrost of the high plateaus. This is the home of the Pazyryk culture, the Scythian nomads who roamed these steppes 2,500 years ago. In the soaring Ukok Plateau, archaeologists found the Ice Maiden, a mummified priestess covered in intricate tattoos of mythical beasts. Tattoos that look startlingly modern, preserved by the same freezing cold that you are fighting against. Her discovery unleashed a wave of controversy. The locals believe that removing her from the ice angered the spirits. causing earthquakes and misfortunes. It is a reminder that in the Altai, the past is never dead. It is merely frozen, waiting to be disturbed. As you look out over the steppe, you see the impressionist heat haze shimmering over the red rocks. It looks like a mirage. A wavering curtain between worlds, but it is a warning. This is a land of extreme duality. In the summer, the heat can blister your skin, cooking you in the thin air. In the winter, the winds are so fierce they can strip the paint off a vehicle and freeze a man standing up. It is a beautiful trap, a place that lures you with its colors, seduces you with its cosmic scale, and then isolates you with its indifference. The Altai is the final sentinel. It stands at the crossroads of Russia, China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan, watching the empires below squabble over borders while it remains eternal, frozen, and sacred. You have traveled from the sulfur smoke of Norilsk to the red dust of the moon. You have seen the ice roads breathing under the weight of trucks, the cathedral pillars rising from the fossilized sea, and the melting craters vomiting the past into the present. You have heard the silence of the taiga and the booming of the frozen rivers. And now, as you stand in the shadow of the Golden Mountains, listening to the wind whip through the prayer flags, you realize that the journey was never about conquering Siberia. It was about letting Siberia conquer you. You are a speck of dust on the hem of a garment worn by a giant, and in that realization, in that crushing insignificance, there is a strange and profound peace. The land does not care if you live or die, and because of that, you are finally, truly free. Frozen giants and the bleeding earth. The smoke of Norilsk fades into a memory of sulfur and ash, a gray stain left behind on the horizon of the mind. To escape the iron grip of the industrial north, the path turns back to the wild. Away from the smelters and the weeping chimneys toward the realm of the stone sentinels. Here the world sheds its skin of metal and wires. The journey descends to the banks of the Lena. A vein of water so vast it cleaves the continent, one of the longest and most powerful rivers to ever carve a trench through the earth. In the depths of winter, the Lena is no longer a river. It becomes the frozen highway. The water, choked by temperatures that shatter thermometers, turns into a slab of blue-white concrete. Trucks weighing 20 tons, laden with timber and supplies, drive upon the ice as if it were asphalt, their tires humming a low, dangerous drone over the sleeping current below. But as the wheels roll south, down the spine of the river, the sentinels begin to rise. They emerge from the mist like the jagged teeth of a sleeping god. These are the Lena pillars. Rising nearly 650 feet straight out of the frozen white sheet, these rock formations stand like a petrified forest of giants. They are not merely stone, they are time made visible. 500 million years of history are stacked in layers of Cambrian limestone. They were formed when the Earth was a completely different place, when this frozen land was a warm, shallow sea, teeming with the first explosions of life. They have stood here while empires rose, burned, and vanished into dust. They stood here before the first lung drew breath. Standing at the base of these pillars, a primitive insignificance takes hold of the observer. The human scale is erased. These are not just rocks, they are chronicles written in the language of pressure and erosion. They hold the fossils of ancient creatures, trilobites, archaeocyathids, beings that swam and hunted in a silence that predates the dinosaurs. They are the mute witnesses to the epochs. In the brief, blinding flash of summer, wooden stairs allow for an ascent to the crown of the cliffs. From the top, the view is alien, a panorama that belongs to another planet. The vastness of the Sakha Republic stretches to the trembling horizon, an endless green and blue expanse of taiga and water. There are no roads here. There are no power lines cutting the sky. There are no signs of human interference, only the wind moving through the larch trees. This is the true Siberia. It is a place that does not need humanity. It was here long before the first footstep fell, and it will remain here long after the cities of steel and glass have succumbed to the shifting permafrost. The Lena pillars are the guardians of the silence. They serve as a stark reminder that while machines can dig holes in the ground and engineers can build cities on stilts to cheat the cold, the human race is merely a guest in a house that does not belong to it, but the silence is deceptive. As the journey moves through the timeline of the rocks, a new and darker narrative begins to bleed through the ice. We must speak of the great thaw. The permafrost, the frozen glue that holds the North together, is melting. It is no longer a permanent foundation. It is a retreating memory. In recent years, great craters have started tearing open the skin of the Siberian tundra. These gaping maws, like the Batagaika crater, are not caused by meteors falling from the stars. They are caused by the Earth exploding from within. Methane, trapped for eons, expands. As the ancient ice thaws, organic matter that has been frozen for millennia, roots, bones, leaves, flesh, begins to rot. The decomposition releases gas that builds pressure under the soil until the ground literally detonates, leaving behind dark, jagged scars that the locals call gateways to the underworld. Science finds itself walking through a graveyard that is waking up. In the weeping mud, men are finding frozen giants. Woolly mammoths, emerging from the slump, are so perfectly preserved that the last meal of steppe grass still sits in their stomachs, and liquid blood still lingers in their veins, dark and thick. It is as if a time capsule is being forced open by the heat, but the thaw releases more than just the majestic dead. It releases the invisible monsters of the past, ancient viruses and bacteria, some of which have not seen the light of day in 50,000 years, are being reanimated. Pithovirus, mollyvirus, giant viruses from the Stone Age are waking up in the petri dishes of the melting world. The melting permafrost is a slow-motion catastrophe, a silent earthquake that never stops. It is shifting the concrete foundations of Yakutsk, twisting apartment blocks until they crack. It is snapping the pipelines of Norilsk, spilling oil into the rivers. It is a reminder that the trap of Siberia is changing. The land is no longer just holding its secrets, it is vomiting them out. We have witnessed the coldest cities and the deepest scars. We have seen how the industrial machine tried to conquer the ice with iron and fire. But Siberia is more than just industry and cold. It has a soul that is deeper than any diamond mine, and that soul is feverish. We have traveled across the iron arteries and felt the bone-shattering chill, but now the path leads toward the final frontier of the spirit. The journey leaves behind the scars of extraction. We have seen what happens when humans try to break Siberia with machines and fire, but as the movement pushes toward the southern borders, toward the deepest heart of the wilderness, the machines fall silent. This is where the paper maps start to fail. This is where the physical world begins to blur into something much more ancient, much more primal. This is the entry into the soul of the taiga. Up until now, the journey has been defined by survival, keeping the skin from freezing to metal, keeping the engine from dying in the negative 50-degree air, keeping the eyes open in the blinding ice fog. But in this final leg, the challenge changes. It is no longer about whether the body can survive the environment, it is about whether the mind can understand it. The trajectory aims toward the Altai Mountains, toward the Buddhist temples of Buryatia, and toward a plateau so remote it makes the moon look accessible. Siberia is not just a place where people were sent to vanish in the gulags, it is a place where, if the eyes look closely enough, lost things might be found. But a warning hangs in the thin air. The deeper the traveler goes into the spirit of this land, the harder it is to leave. The landscape ceases to be a passive backdrop. It is not just watching anymore, it is inviting the traveler to stay forever, to become part of the silence. The journey south arrives at the Altai, the lunar mirage of the south. If the expectation was more flat, white tundra, the horizon provides a violent shock. Suddenly the earth buckles and heaves. Massive, jagged peaks of granite and slate tear through the clouds, piercing the heavens. This is the Altai, often called the Golden Mountains, and the name is earned in light. When the sun hits these peaks at dawn, they do not just glow, they look like they are made of molten ore, burning with an inner fire. The vehicle finds itself on the Chui Highway. Travelers and geographers call this one of the 10 most beautiful roads on Earth, but the word beautiful feels too small, too domestic for this scale. As the wheels turn, the lush, dark green of the Siberian cedar forest begins to peel away like dead skin. The air becomes dry, thin, and electrified with ozone. Within an hour, the forest is gone, replaced by the Chui steppe. Suddenly, the reality of Russia vanishes. The reality of Earth itself seems to waver. The landscape transforms into a yellow, orange, and deep red expanse that looks exactly like a lunar scenery or a vision of Mars before the atmosphere died. The Earth is cracked, parched, and ancient. This is a sacred geography. The Altai people, the indigenous nomads of these highlands, believe that these mountains are the center of the universe, the navel of the world. They do not see rocks and dirt. They see the Altai easy, the master spirits of the peaks. The engine stops near a field of ancient petroglyphs. A hand reaches out to touch a stone that was carved 5,000 years ago by a nomadic hunter. The fingers trace images of deer with antlers that spiral like tree branches, of hunters with recurved bows, and of strange celestial symbols that hint at contact with the divine. These are not just doodles left by idle hands, they are contracts with the land. The people who lived here understood a secret that the modern world has forgotten. Humanity does not own the Altai owns humanity. There is a magnetic anomaly here that makes the head throb. A pressure behind the eyes. It is a place of power that has drawn shamans and mystics for millennia. Scattered across the steppe are the ovus, pyramids of stones piled high by travelers. Tradition demands that a stone be added and that the traveler walk around the pile 3 times to ask for permission to pass. Ribbons of blue fabric, kata, flutter in the wind, carrying prayers to the sky. If the ritual is ignored, the locals say the mountain will close. In Siberia, when a mountain closes, the path disappears and people simply cease to be found. Looking out over the steppe, the impressionist heat haze shimmers over the red rocks. It looks like a mirage, a trick of the light, but it is a warning. This is a land of extreme duality. In the summer, the heat can blister the skin, baking the moisture from the body. In the winter, the winds, known as the sama, are so fierce they can strip the paint off a vehicle and freeze the marrow. It is a beautiful trap, a place that lures the spirit with its colors and then isolates it with its scale. Here, the rivers like the Katun flow not with clear water, but with a milky turquoise substance, grinding the mountain rock into flour as they rush toward the Arctic. The roar of the water is the only sound that competes with the wind. The silence here is heavy, filled with the weight of the Kurgan burial mounds, where the Scythian warriors sleep, preserved in the ice, adorned in gold tattoos, waiting for a call that will never come. The Altai is the threshold. It is where the map ends and the myth begins. It is the place where the borders of Russia, Mongolia, China, and Kazakhstan collide. But in the shadow of the peaks, borders are meaningless lines drawn by men who have never felt the cold. Here, the only law is the law of the sky and the stone. The traveler stands small against the backdrop of eternity, breathing in the dust of the red earth, understanding finally that to travel through Siberia is not to conquer distance, it is to surrender to time. The smoke of the cities is forgotten, there is only the wind, the rock, and the slow grinding turn of the planet beneath the feet.